So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this exciting side event. And if people could settle down, then we can start. So the title of this side event is Tech Transfer for Medicines and Vaccines, Opportunities and Challenges. And it's a side event organized by GSK. And I would like to welcome my panelists and as well the audience. Myself, a word to myself, I'm Manuel Batz. I work for GIZ. I work in a project that supports the African Union in establishing vaccine manufacturing capacity on the continent. Let me start with a definition of technology transfer. Technology transfer is a systematic process of transferring products, processes, and knowledge, along with relevant documentation and professional expertise between different facilities or organizations. This can occur from a research and development, R&D lab, to a manufacturing site or between different manufacturing sites. And I just thought it's a good way to start because many in the audience might not know what tech transfer means. It's technology transfer, and I try to give the definition. Technology transfer of medicines and vaccines can be a useful tool to boost supply and facilitate access to prevention and treatment for patients. But, there's always a but, while tech transfer can be seen as a promising solution, the complexities and requirements can be largely underestimated. And that's also part of the reason of this panel, to have a kind of eye-opener for some to understand better what it means. Yeah, tech transfer is said very fast, very easy, but it's not. It's the contrary, really. So the objective of the session today is to highlight the opportunities that tech transfers bring, but also the complexities. We hope that this session will raise awareness about the key enablers for effective tech transfers and the policy and funding environment needed to maximize the impact of tech transfers. I will now introduce you to our panelists. I will start with Peter to my left, Peter Beyer. He's the Deputy Executive Director of the Global Antibiotic Research and Development Partnership. In short, it's GARD-P. He has been instrumental in setting up GARD-P and the AMR Action Fund, the Antimicrobial Resistance, another acronym. He led this unit at the WHO. He has expertise in intellectual property and access to medicines. He is chair of the Medicines Patent Pool Expert Advisory Group. So welcome, Peter. And to the audience. Thank you. Thank you. Now coming to Ariane McCabe, who's sitting in front. She's the Senior Director for Global Health Policy and Advocacy and of the Geneva Hub of GSK. Ariane leads GSK's policy and advocacy work to support access at scale to GSK's global health portfolio, in particular treatments and vaccines for infectious diseases, including TB, malaria, and antimicrobial resistance, AMR, as we learned. She and the team work closely with key global and regional stakeholders. Ariane is also a member of the Stop TB Board, representing private sector companies, chairs the IFPMA Health Progress Working Group, and is a member of the IFPMA constituency on the Gavi board. So welcome, Ariane, and thank you. Now I move to the next panelist, Rajinder Suri. He is the CEO of the DCVMN, so another acronym, Developing Countries Vaccine Manufacturers Network. And in principle, these are all the vaccine manufacturers that are the main suppliers of the Gavi pooled procurement, right? And you are the CEO of this important organization. Rajinder is responsible for leadership, governance, strategy, vision, and overall operational excellence of the DCVMN. He has represented DCVMN at G20 Health Group and at ACT-A, currently a Gavi PPC delegate and a permanent member of CEPI's Joint Coordination Group and Strategic Advisory Board, member of the RVMC, another acronym, Regional Vaccine Manufacturing Collaborative, and has over 25 years in the industry. Welcome, Rajinder. Great to have you here. And then, last but not least, Farah Losper, to my right. She has two hats on. One is she's Chief Commercial Officer of the BioVac, a South African biotech company. And she is serving as chairperson of the board of the AVMI, which is African Vaccine Manufacturing Initiative, where that unites all the manufacturers of the continent. Yeah? And you drive the commercial strategy of BioVac. You have a strong background in finance and strategy. You are passionate advocating. Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah. Passionate advocate for enhancing vaccine manufacturing in Africa. That's really true. And you are pivotal in shaping global and African policies for vaccine accessibility. Welcome, Farah. Great to have you here. Now we will move to the questions. So we will have two sets of questions. Each panelist can answer, gets a question, has 3 minutes. Afterwards, there's 10 minutes for the audience to ask questions. Yeah, and this we have 2 times, and then we have to wrap up. So now, setting the scene, what are the benefits and opportunities of tech transfers? That's the theme. Now I have a question for Peter. GARDP is working to support the development and access to new antibiotics. How are you approaching this? What is the role of tech transfers in ensuring access to antibiotics?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and also for the question. As you said, we are a product development partnership. We are working mainly in the clinical development of new antibacterial treatments and also to make them accessible. And tech transfer is particularly relevant for us in one project at the moment where we are working with Shionogi and Chai on transferring the production of a new reserve antibiotic which was developed by Shionogi to our manufacturer in India, Orchid. And we reached an agreement with Shionogi, who gave us the license for 135 countries to commercialize and market this new reserve antibiotic. And for that, we need to establish the manufacturing capabilities. And of course, there is also an expectation that we need to steward this new antibiotic, meaning that we need to assure that it's used appropriately, only in the indications where it's really warranted. And you asked what is the added value. Of course, I mean, what we expect with this tech transfer is that our manufacturer is going to serve our network of sub-licensees, distributors, to make this drug available in our territory. And this is the territory typically in Southeast Asia in particular, where antimicrobial resistance is really high. And we know that probably below 10% of the patients who really need to be treated with new reserve antibiotics are really getting access. So the access gap is huge. And this is what we want to close with the tech transfer. And then as a side effect, it's of course that this antibiotic called cefiderocol is a 4th generation cephalosporin, is very complicated to manufacture. So it is also for our Indian manufacturer very challenging, but it's also the opportunity to also learn more about this specific kind of manufacturing technology and capabilities, and that is of course an added value too. And I think we will talk about what is needed to make this a successful project later, so I'm happy to come back on that.
Thanks a lot. So access is an aspect, and of course capacity building. So learning new to master new technology. So in summary, now I have a question to Ariane. GSK has a long history of doing tech transfers. How does GSK see tech transfers? What do you want to achieve with them?
Thanks, Manuel. And it's great to see a really good turnout over lunchtime on this important topic. As you said, GSK has a long history in engaging in tech transfers, and we continue to be quite engaged in tech transfers efforts across our full portfolio, medicines and vaccines. As a business, we see tech transfers as one of the tools that enable us to build a security of supply, to really deliver impact at scale, but also to facilitate access to our products. And in particular, we have a long-standing commitment to global health and quite ambitious goals in the space. We like to say that we are aiming to change the trajectory of high-burden infectious diseases in lower-income countries. So thinking primarily about products related to HIV, TB, malaria, and of course pathogens that have an impact on AMR. And in particular, in this global health space, we really look to use partnerships and tech transfers to support our access at scale. I did want to mention 3 tech transfers because I think it gives a bit more color to some of the considerations and the different kinds of modalities that we've experienced in the tech transfer space. So the first one is our typhoid conjugate vaccine. This vaccine was developed at GSK and was ultimately transferred to Biological E, which is a member organization of DCVMN, and that was back in 2013. And in this case, Biological E did the phase 3 clinical trial and then has also subsequently manufactured and delivered this product, is delivering this product to many countries, including many Gavi-eligible countries. Another example is our malaria vaccine. In this case, we developed this product, we are manufacturing this product and supplying this product to what will be 12 Gavi-eligible countries by the end of this year. But back in 2021, we signed a tech transfer agreement with Path and Bharat Biotech, which is also a DCVM member. And in this case, we expect it's going to take about 7 years for that tech transfer to fully happen and for Bharat to be a full supplier of the vaccines. So this is quite a long timeline, but one of the big drivers of this timeline, or some of the drivers of the timeline, are really around the complexity of manufacturing, considerations about new manufacturing sites that are required, ordering and using equipment that is exactly the same as in the original facility, but also regulatory, and in this case, Indian regulatory approval as well as WHO PQ. And the last one I would highlight is through our HIV business, ViiV, and in this case, they have done a tech transfer to 2 of the voluntary license holders for dolutegravir, and it's really enabled massive scale up of the first dispersible first-line HIV product for children. And this has allowed us to introduce this product in over 100 countries. So really, I think hopefully these examples give you a bit of a sense of the different kinds of ways we partner, the different objectives we have, and the different modalities that we take into consideration as part of these tech transfers.
Thank you. So then you mentioned global health. So this does mean that sometimes you do tech transfers, as these first 2 examples, that are not really in your commercial normal way of doing business, right? Because then you tech transfer to other businesses and they take care to manufacture and distribute to markets where you would not go directly, right? So that's a part of giving access and to taking responsibility as well.
Yeah. But I would say we certainly do tech transfers as part of our commercial business as well. I'm highlighting some examples from our global health portfolio, but we certainly do those. Actually, we just updated our global technology transfer policy that's on our website, but it gives quite a list of the different kinds of tech transfers we've engaged in over time. So if people are interested in some of those examples, you can have a look at the GSK website as well.
Super. Thank you. Now, to Rajinder, a question. Many of your member companies of the DCVMN have engaged in tech transfers. They received, as we just saw, or they transferred to other partners. What has been your members' interest in these? What do you see as the opportunities?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Manuel. First of all, to you and Aryan for inviting me here. It's such a pleasure to be here in this valuable audience. You see, as far as DCVMN is concerned, I'll start with the second part of your question, what is our interest? The interest is very simple. We would like to, achieve and or optimize, I would say, the societal and the economic impact of vaccinations in the whole world, including Africa. So Africa has been very, very close to our heart, and last 4 years, I can say that we have sincerely worked together with several African vaccine manufacturers, and tech transfer has been one of the main goal to make sure that this happens. Now, as Aryan has made my job very simple by talking about the tech transfers that happened between GSK and BioE in way back in 2013, and now recent tech transfer with Bharat Biotech. So this Bharat Biotech transfer is more on malaria vaccine. This is the first malaria vaccine which has been introduced in the whole world, the RTSS AS01E. So I think what is objective is to make sure that affordability and accessibility of the vaccine is there to larger audience, larger population of the world. And when we are talking about this accessibility, I can tell you that by 2029, under this agreement, the tech transfer, Bharat Biotech will be the sole manufacturer and distributor of the vaccine. Secondly, the prices I would say, will be brought down to less than 50% of the current price. So it will be somewhere around very affordable price of $5 a dose, which will be made available to all the countries, particularly Africa, where malaria is rampant. So these have been some of the societal and economic benefits that have been provided. Other than that, of course, our members have engaged in various tech transfers. Serum Institute of India, for example, has tied up with Aspen for 4 vaccines. And recently, BioE has engaged with BioVac for pneumo 14 vaccine. And of course, Korean vaccine manufacturers are there. We have U Biologics, which has a very successful relationship with 2 of the vaccine manufacturers in Africa. So there are several examples where, not only, Indian manufacturers, but also Korean, Indonesian, and Chinese vaccine manufacturers are entering the fray to tie up with African vaccine manufacturers to ensure 2 important things. One is the vaccine equity, which, got the biggest hit during COVID-19. And second is to ensure the regional security.
Excellent. Thank you for these insights. And then, to Farah, you being a representative of an African company that has been recipient of tech transfers. What do you, that's a quite open question, but still, what do you see as the benefits for BioVac and for Africa in having received tech transfers in the past?
Manuel, this question's so important that I need 2 mics. So, thank you so much for having me here. I think it's a great conversation, and let me take it back to Africa. So you ask, what's the importance? I think successful technology transfers are critical to Africa's journey for vaccine sovereignty. And why is there this push for vaccine sovereignty? It's post-pandemic, when we know Africa was left right last in the queue for life-saving vaccines, which led to the African Union's mandated call for 60% of the continent's vaccine requirements to come from African manufacturers by 2040. To achieve that kind of scale in that kind of time, you need successful technology transfers, right? So Africa CDC sent a group of people, including Path and Chide, to inspect all the companies across the continent who said they can manufacture vaccines. And they highlighted that probably by 2030, there are 3 manufacturers in 2 countries who will have up to 10 PQ'd vaccines, WHO pre-qualified vaccines. by 2030 via IPD in Senegal, BioVac and Aspen in South Africa. Again, to achieve that, we need successful technology transfers. In a post-pandemic accelerated ecosystem supporting vaccine manufacturing regionalized for access, we see the likes of Gavi's AVMA, which is a financial instrument that has been approved in 2024 to help African manufacturers reduce the medium-term cost of manufacture so that they can compete to get volumes, to get scale, to ultimately reduce their costs for manufacture so that post-AVMA they're able to take play in the market, right? And again, you need AVMs need technology transfers to be able to access those funds, which are essentially grant funds for peak pre-qualified vaccines. So if I take that back to BioVac, pre-pandemic, about 20 years, did only 2 tech transfers with 2 multinationals, Pfizer and Sanofi, all based on the domestic market, volumes only. And post-pandemic, because of the accelerated ecosystem that I mentioned now, busy with 3 current technology transfers and 1 end-to-end project. And so the point, Manuel, is that journey, hopefully with these 3 technology transfers mentioned by Rajinder, Biological E, Sanofi, U-Biologics, would take BioVac on a journey to sustainable vaccine manufacturing, but importantly at the same time as focusing on its development products and its mRNA capability building. So your question is it important to Africa? It's important to Africa, it's important to BioVac, because it's the pathway to sustainable vaccine manufacturing at the same time enabling development partnerships, which take longer, they're more difficult to secure, but the continent is the only way forward, where we prioritize owning our own assets and becoming the technology transferors of the future.
Thanks a lot, and I would add perhaps that it's so important that tech transfers succeed, that after a tech transfer that is in itself difficult, the manufacturer is producing at the right quality, at the right volume, not for 1 year, 2 years, but for several years. Yeah, and that's and this is what therefore it's so important. Excellent. Now we go to the next section, which is 10-minute Q&A for the audience. So whoever wants to volunteer, we have perhaps 2 questions there. We have 5. No. Let's start here. Here.
Here we go.
Hi, my name is Hani Kim. I'm based at the Wright Foundation in Seoul, Korea. As a funder, we fund product development for R&D, including tech transfer. My question is to Rajinder as well as Farah. As a funder, we strive to support tech transfers in a way that can result in truly sustainable regional level manufacturing, as you've mentioned. So far, we've been privileged to have given out a number of grants, including to BioVac, to support tech transfer from U-Biologics for pentavalent meningococcal conjugate vaccine. Would you 2 of you have any advice to funders like Wright Foundation to have some key considerations to really ensure that the tech transfer is not just a one-off grant, but it truly contributes in a sustainable manner?
Shall I go? Go ahead. Do you want to go? Go ahead. Okay, so firstly, from BioVac, thank you for the funding. I agree, it's very important. So I'll let Rajinder cover the question. I want to say something that I think it's a great question. I, as lobbying and advocating for African industry, I always make it a point to talk about where the capabilities and skills are. And one of the critical elements right now is that I think we need to consolidate funding, and we need to really make sure that those that have built capabilities and capacities that are almost there, that they get there, and then diversify the funding. Whereas what I feel is happening now is the funding has been split across so many pieces that it's not necessarily taking it over the line. So for me, I would focus on where the capacities exist, really double down, provided it's a commercially viable opportunity, and then look for complementary from a platform perspective and from a company perspective.
Thank you, Farah, very rightly suggested. And thank you for an excellent question. As far as funding is concerned, this is the lifeline of any project, basically, and tech transfer particularly, because the manufacturers are looking for that kind of, breathing support, and you provide oxygen, so to say. However, when you're saying what the advice to the funders, basically there are two kinds of things I think we should be looking at. One is there has to be a consortium of funders so that we are not dissipating, the funding in a very diluted manner or a kind of fragmented manner. That is one thing which is very important, that which project is being funded by whom. So there has to be a very clear understanding and one window where manufacturers can go and seek support for funding. The second is that it has to be hand-holding. It is not only the funding part of it, but it is the financial advice which is very important, very critical, because most of the manufacturers, they are coming from manufacturing background, but not financial background. They may have CFOs, they may have, accountants working for them, but what is really important is what is the kind of business sense that is being given to them, so that it is not only to, from R&D level, but also scaling up and then scaling out. The whole entire journey is supported by the funders. Thank you.
Excellent. Now to the second question over there.
Thank you. Great discussion. Magda Rosenmüller, Jesse Business School, Barcelona. My question would be experiences in developing local ecosystems in manufacturing, health, digital, etc., where we have different stakeholders. And how would be your experience, and how can we foster this across different African countries by bridging private funding, but also public funding, having investments from ministries in order to increase that. So would like you to share your experience in that. And we work with other business schools in Africa, and they're very eager and they do participate. But I would love to hear some learning points on this. Thanks.
Shall I go? Okay, thanks so much for the question. I think, again, great questions today. So firstly, I think the Africa CDC has played such a massive role in terms of coordination in a post-pandemic world, such that we can now see which are the vaccine manufacturers that will have which products. Because it's easy to say buy local, but what do you buy, and by when do you buy it? When will it be available? What specifically does it look like? So I think there's a need for this coordination, and we're seeing that from Africa CDC moving from PAVM, which was about vaccines, to PHAHM, which is about all pharma, one health. And we've seen now steady progress in that coordination across pharma and diagnostics as well. So that once you look at the continent, you can unlock and leverage the buying power of the governments to get that kind of coordination. But on a that's on a macro level. From a micro level, it is tough. I know, for example, in South Africa, there's a very robust ecosystem of scientists, of research, etc. And it's all really pulled together in, I think, quite a good way in South Africa, but we need to be able to do that across the continent. And I think the only way we can do that is through supporting the team at Africa CDC as they harmonize health across the continent.
Excellent. Now, if there are no more questions, we can go to the next segment, which now we want. Excuse me.
Thank you very much for this really helpful discussion. I'm from Ukraine, in Moslinchuk. I'm biotech lead in the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Previously, I used to work in the Ministry of Health of Ukraine. And you know, Ukraine is a low middle income country. And of course, we struggle a lot in the government, in the accessibility and affordability of the vaccines and medicines in general. And we enhance a lot our, our local capacity to produce, and we learn a lot, for example, the experience of Africa, how you manufacture your vaccines. But a few years ago, we had a blockbuster fight with Abbott, for example, it's Alluvia. access in Ukraine for biosimilars and generics. And my primary question, probably for GSK representative, how do you advocate or how do you make a decision to transfer your technology, you know, for some small manufacturers? You know, because we procure right now for the budget funding, it's China, Indian technologies, because it's more affordable for our budget funding. But I know that mostly biggest manufacturers, they care a lot about their IPs. So how do you make this decision? Because primarily you are take care of your IP, you are take care about your business.
Okay, go ahead. No, please go ahead.
Well, actually, I was going to say I was going to speak a bit more in detail about this in the next section. Maybe I answer the question in the next section, and if I haven't answered it, then happy to talk more about it afterwards.
I will follow you.
Okay.
So then the attention is then great for the next set of questions. Yeah, we want to focus now on some of the challenges and the key enablers for successful tech transfer. And we as GIZ, funded by the BMZ and by EU, we are concentrating on these key enablers. Yeah, we are supporting initiatives or coordination in and around market shaping, regulation, talent development, access to finance, all these prerequisites for a successful tech transfer to happen. And I think this idea should also be clear. Tech transfer is not existing on its own. It is the end of a lot of work that has nothing to do with the tech transfer itself. Yeah, the technicality from moving a product from A to B, and where it's outside of the companies involved. Yeah, and now I start again with Peter. First question: what are some of the key lessons learned from GARD-P's tech transfers, such as CEFI Dairy Coal? And perhaps you can explain what this is. I don't know, but you will explain to us.
Thank you so much. It's as I said, it's a fourth generation cephalosporin. I'm not sure this is going to help you very much.
That's fine.
Let's say it's a life-saving antibiotic for people who are critically ill with, in hospital. And it's typically one of these antibiotics that you are using when nothing else is actually working. And you have used the whole arsenal, and then this is your last hope. And I think it is really important to speak about the challenges. And I want to go back also to a couple of questions. And for example, how do we select our recipient for tech transfer? We do an open call, and then we get applications from generic companies, and then who would like to either be a sub-licensee and commercialize it, but also for manufacturing. And then we are doing an audit, and we are assessing the company whether they have the technical capabilities to manufacture this drug. Because as I said, this particular product is really challenging. And you need to have a recipient who can absorb this technology. So the recipient company needs to have a certain level of mastering that they can successfully get to this additional step. And I think this is really key. And of course, you want to also have a financially sound recipient, because for Orchid, as I mentioned, the recipient of the tech transfer from Shionogi, they are investing overall 25 million in 2 facilities. One API facility and one finished dose facility. And to speak about the challenges, for example, the lead time to buy the machinery for the finished dose facility is 18 months. Because I think you said it's the same machinery that actually Shionogi used. And so you wait 18 months just to receive, if it all goes well, to receive the machinery, the line that you can install in your facility that in the meantime you actually build up from zero. There was no building. And then you need to make it work. And that is just the start, because then you need to reach the quality level. And that requires also running the facility and getting used to it. So also there is a lot of, somebody mentioned intellectual property. Yes, we were Shionogi was very generous in giving us the license and the rights to transfer these manufacturing rights. But what is even more important is the the know-how. This is not something you can just learn on your own somewhere. No, I mean, the people go actually to Japan to learn it. And this is also, so you need from the company that wants to transfer the technology, it's a multi-year commitment to follow through with the recipient and to walk the recipient through all these different hurdles. And there will be challenges, there will be failures, there will be sometimes batches that don't reach the quality standards. You don't know why, so you have to go back like a detective and see where does it come from, what do you need to change, what is not, what did you do different, was the temperature different? And so this is you really need this commitment of the people who have done this manufacturing. And we, in our project, we have engaged with Chai. Chai is one of the partners of this project because Chai has this experience in doing tech transfer. And they have expertise in supervising it and guiding it. It's super valuable. And we have built up a CMC team, so a chemical manufacturing team, which is based partly in Geneva, partly in India. And they work on CMC issues across a number of our partner companies, but these people are essential. And there are few entities who do have these technical capabilities to do this. So I think this is the technical challenges. And then I wanted to also, for you as from a business school, I think what is really key is there needs to be a market. There needs to be a buyer, because the tech transfer is only going to work if somebody is going to buy the product. And as I said, Orchid is investing around 25 million. They need to earn back their investment, meaning they need to sell product, and also they need to sell it at a certain price, because the cost of goods, unfortunately, are relatively high. It's a reserve antibiotic, so by definition, the volumes are very low, very small, so which means that the cost of goods are comparably high. So that is, to me, one aspect which is often neglected. Don't do tech transfer if you're not sure that at the end there is a market, there is a buyer who is going to buy, because otherwise the facility is going to close.
Thank you. Yeah, very, very helpful to understand this from your perspective, and with this concrete example. What people also need to understand, the pharmaceutical manufacturing process of any pharmaceutical, and with biologics even more, is part of the product. And this needs to be understood. The process is so rigidly controlled, the input materials, the processes, everything has to be documented. If you change a little thing, the product has changes, and then you don't want to inject it into people. Yeah, so therefore, the process is part of the product. It's not just the API. And so therefore it makes it so complex with the know-how as well. Now to Ariane, you shared some of the different kinds of tech transfers GSK has engaged in. And what are some of the criteria that you look for in tech transfer partners?
Great, thanks. And I think I'm going to, my remarks will really reflect on some of the points that have been made already as well. But I want to also answer the question, sharing a GSK perspective overall, but also some of the considerations, the particular considerations that we have when we think about the work that we're doing in global health. So I think, as you've heard, overall, tech transfer agreements are really generally quite long-term partnerships. They require a significant amount of time, significant investments, and actually a significant amount of trust on both sides, both on the tech transfer side and the tech transfer recipient side. And we really, both parties really want to make sure that that they're really set up for success, and that they are making the best use of the resources that are being put into these tech transfers. I think another important point from our perspective is also it's really important that these are voluntary partnerships and voluntary engagements. This really allows us to make sure that we're choosing the best partners, but that we're also fostering an optimal collaborative relationship and environment. So 4 criteria that we look at when thinking about tech transfer partners. One of them, and we've talked about it already, is certainly around IP. We really want to feel like, as innovators, that we have the confidence that we're able to share product designs, know-how, manufacturing technologies with the tech transfer recipient. The second one I would say is really around skills, manufacturing capacity, but also manufacturing capability, and also the ability and the experience to deliver those products. You know, manufacturing medicines and vaccines are really complicated. They're really complex. They require specialized scientists, technical personnel, equipment, as we've heard about. And it's really important that the recipient is really able to reach the highest levels of compliance, safety, and quality of those products that they're producing. I think from a global health perspective in particular, we're also really wanting to make sure that that partner has an aligned vision with us, as Rajinder was talking about, for access, and has that experience in not only manufacturing, but also delivering medicines at scale. And I think the scale part is really important. So on the global health perspective, that means sometimes that the partner we look for has experience in delivering and working and supplying to public markets, that they have experience working with pooled procurement agents and international funders. And I would say the third thing that we're looking for is a supportive regulatory environment. I think we've touched on this also already, but it's really important that these products meet stringent requirements and standards. But there's also a clear pathway and a timely pathway to secure review and market authorization at the end. From a global health perspective, this often means experience working with WHO PQ, as well as the regulatory processes in lower income countries. And the last thing I would say, and I think we've heard a bit about this already, is that it's really important to have a viable and accessible market. And from a commercial and a global health perspective in our tech transfers, you know, in order to be successful, the tech transfer recipient needs to have a viable commercial proposition for that asset. They need to be able to, as you said, Peter, be able to sell and recoup the investments that they've made. So it's really important that the business model and approach is really going to be something that delivers and is successful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Quite a lot of criteria, but just shows it's not trivial. Now to Rajinder, what are some of the key factors that make for a successful tech transfer for member companies? And it applies to both sides. Receiving.
Wrong question to the right person. Because everything has been said by Peter and Aryan. There is nothing else to add. But let me bring a different perspective. You see, tech transfer is more like a big Indian wedding. You need to understand the psychology of the partner. You need to understand, it is not a marriage between a bridegroom and groom. It is basically a marriage between families. So you need to understand the company, both companies, the culture of those companies. I use a concept, new concept, which has been introduced, which is called LMP. This is like-minded people. Only if you breathe same air, you should get into tech transfer. Or else you will get into divorce very soon. So you need to understand what are the requirements, what are the expectations, what are the aspirations of the partners, and how to go about it. You know, Aryan very rightly said, you know, when we are looking for a partner, for example, North-South collaboration, why will North give technology? Why? Unless they see that there is a win-win situation, there has to be a scaling up, a huge scaling up capability, and also the absorption capacity that you are able to absorb the technology and you are able to reproduce the technology, because the pharmaceutical responsibility rests on you when you are manufacturing that product. And the reputational risk is with the company which is passing on the technology. So you have to be very, very conscious and cautious about selecting the partner. The second important aspect, of course, Peter touched upon, is the assured market. Unless you have a real market available for you, there is no point of going into technology transfer. Because what is happening today, when we are talking about Africa, unless there is a consolidated market for African vaccine manufacturers, that the business proposition is sustainable for them, what is the point of doing the tech transfers? So I think that is something very, very critical from a manufacturer's perspective, that we should have a clear market orientation and expectations, what is called AMC, the Assured Market Commitment, which Gavi has introduced in 2009, I would say. And I think that is something which is very, very critical. Just to answer the question of my friend, somebody from Ukraine had approached me almost 4 years back for advice on setting up a manufacturing unit. I will not name the company, but we definitely went ahead to suggest them the right way of doing the manufacturing in Ukraine. It is important, first of all, to have the political will to get into that, because it's a long-term investment. When you're putting up a facility, it is not only for tomorrow, it is for day after and years to come. So you have to be very mindful of what you are really investing and going into. And then what is the kind of market mapping you have done, which kind of vaccines you are really going to produce, and which kind of vaccines have a market, the market in your country, rather than thinking about you'll be able to export. That's a big dream. And then, of course, the regulatory harmonization, which is very, very important. Today, Africa is also suffering from the regulatory timelines, and unless these are expedited, all efforts will go waste. So we have to really look at a holistic picture rather than only looking at one aspect of the tech transfer.
But yeah, thank you for this. You answered the question, my question, by the way. Thank you. But if you would have to pick one, what is the most urgent or the most critical that you see in the current context?
You see, if you have to pick up one, you have to be sure that the partner you are selecting is the right partner.
Okay, so the human factor, let's call it like this.
It is human.
Yeah, interpersonal. It's clear. All boxes are ticked, and you can't stand the person. Or vice versa. Okay, super. Thanks a lot. Now to Farah. Last question. What about you? What are some of the key factors that make for a successful tech transfer?
I feel like this question's been answered, so I'll just give a bit of BioVac's perspective. But before I do, I'm hoping everyone gets a sense of how difficult it is for an African manufacturer to get anywhere in this space, right? So you have a scenario where why do you even do this? Why don't you just continue buying from the incumbents who sell at very low prices based on volumes, based on investment before? You can't, because we've seen what happened in the pandemic. And unfortunately, you can't build pandemic response based on outbreaks. You've got to build it based on routine vaccine capability building, right? So you can't just keep status quo. Now you go to where do you get technology while you take a decade to develop your own technology? You have to do it through tech transfers, but the partners need proof of concept, they need proof of scalability, they need all sorts of things ticked, and then you still have to find this husband or wife that is, thinking the same way that you do. It's very tricky. So I think BioVac has a unique perspective based on, we'll be done, don't worry. So BioVac has a unique perspective based on, it's an interesting case study. If you look pre-pandemic, 20 years, right? We had 2 tech transfers with 2 multinationals, Pfizer and Sanofi. Those were both based on a public-private partnership with the South African government, both based on just domestic volumes. And when the PPP fell apart, there you go, you have a problem, right? Because you've only got a tech transfer based on domestic market, which can never work unless there's some sort of off-tech, which is a word that's been thrown around, and that's a whole separate panel. So post-pandemic, you then have a lot of ecosystem accelerators. We've got a commitment from Africa CDC, we've got coordination, we've got Gavi stepping up with AVMA. Obviously, there remains challenges, but you've got some solutions being crafted. And so in the last 2 years, BioVac signed 3 technology transfers, right? And these 3 are now also together with a development end-to-end project where you now do the drug substance yourself as well, right? So you've got to ask yourself, why has that happened? It's happened because the ecosystem, to your point earlier, is starting to change. But is the ecosystem enough? Probably not. You need trust. And that's going to be the one key deal breaker. And so if you ask some of the lessons learned, I think they're the basics, which have been mentioned before, but I'll summarize. These were hard-won lessons for BioVac over a long period of time. The one is the history of the partner. Have they ever tech transferred a product out to a third party? The history of the recipient. Have they done tech transfers? The platforms, is a platform that you're familiar with. Is it bacterial? Is it viral vector? Is it mRNA? Have you done it before? The regulatory status of the origin product, the regulatory status of the country receiving, the actual familiarity with the partner, because increasingly we're seeing for the likes of BioVac and its partner Sanofi, you're doing a second tech transfer, maybe you do a third one. Then you get to know each other because now you're just renewing your vows, right? Because you've been married. And so I think it's a very complicated space, but the one remaining point is, how do we build that trust? How do we cover the risk for the innovator or compensate them? Because you can understand why there's hesitance, right? This is huge investments, huge impact to people, global health. So how do we find mechanisms that help diversify and underwrite some of that risk? Because we cannot wait until proof of concept if you don't have it yet. So that's where we are.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right. The questions were all similar, but you are different. You have different perspectives. So therefore, I think from a concept, some differences should shine through. I hope they did a little bit. Now we have another 10 minutes for questions from the audience related to the discussion.
Hopefully they're for agenda.
I don't. We can take 2, 3 if it's not too long.
Thank you very much, Michel Kazachkin from the Independent Panel on Pandemic Preparedness. I think we all understand the sophistication behind one technology transfer, the long-term partnership, the human factor, and so on. But then how do we prepare for the next pandemic threat? And how do we make sure that there are platforms, at least basic technology platforms, everywhere? Is that through the transfer of one specific technology somewhere, or the transfer, let's say, of a generic technology, mRNA, viral vector, and so on, and then a trustful relationship that would allow either local development to fit in the pathogen sequence, or a let's say, privileged relationship with another manufacturer. But I can't see in the ongoing discussion how we will have decentralized platforms ready for the next pandemic.
Okay, so let me attempt. Good question, first of all, very thought-provoking. This requires a slightly different and holistic approach, and already various global health organizations, including WHO, Gavi, CEPI, and RVMC, they're all working in this direction, because what you require is a structure which is over-encompassing, that is able to bring all the resources together in one umbrella. And for this now, the IMCM, which is Interim Medical Countermeasures structure, has been made, and under the aegis of that, most of the partner organizations have come together to make sure that what you rightly proposed is the platform technology is deployed. And CEPI is working very seriously into that, in developing those platform technologies. and also supporting manufacturers to develop those kind of platforms which are available and can be replicated for various diseases when it comes any public health emergency of international concern strikes again in future. Already, several such diseases are strolling around in different parts of the world, but we have to be mindful that this is not in one day that you will be able to produce. But SAPI has taken a 100 days mission, and that is something which is very seriously pursuing this objective together with other global health organizations. And WHO has a blueprint of organisms which will be which is being worked upon very seriously to see that which are the families. It's a library of pathogens which has been curated, and under that library, which are the families of pathogens which can potentially create a pandemic in future. So a lot of work is already happening in that direction, and various manufacturers and various other organizations, including all international organizations, are involved in these projects together, and we see a great hope coming in the coming future.
Okay, then here.
So Adam, and I'm with the Charité and the WHO Hub here in Berlin. So question is pretty much more directed towards Peter, who makes a very good point that the end of that pipeline is a good market, essentially, that would tap into tech transfer. But I'm really curious about your thoughts. We've seen emerging sort of newer platforms, particularly from the technology side, and I wonder how much this would change the way people contextualize it, because now it's not just about transferring tech for one drug or one vaccine anymore. There's a utility around sort of remodeling that for other pathogens. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, for our, so Orchid is a company which is specialized in this class of antibiotics. So it is actually one new drug which fits very well in their portfolio and their technical capabilities. But it's different from vaccines. So it's not that you have a mRNA platform. So it's a different concept. So maybe some of the colleagues want to pick up that question. But I don't think that it's going to change the necessity that at the end you need to have a buyer for your product, and that is depending on what you do, it's challenging. In vaccines, you may be able to convince governments. Most of the vaccines are bought by governments. Governments may pay a premium for local manufacture because they have a strategic interest in having a regional or a national manufacturer. If you look at antibiotics, most of them are bought rather by hospitals or health insurers. Why would they pay more to buy locally? I mean, it's what their the Charité hospital manager is not going to allow you to pay more expensive drugs from Germany when you can get them cheaper in India. And so this is also, which is, for him, good financial management, I agree. But in the end, it's going to drive certain manufacturers out of the market, and it's going to concentrate manufacturers in certain parts of the world where you have a competitive advantage. And that is what we see very, very strongly, in particular in antibacterial treatments. And so that is where I think also you need to, it's very different from one product category to the other, and what we can in the end do with respect to market shaping. And we are often asked why we actually selected a manufacturer in India. Yeah, we had companies in Europe, but it was double the investment. So none of our donors would give us that money to actually say it, and also we are global. So I mean, we have no, for us, Asia is as good as Europe. But it's also, in the end, it's a lot about business and economics.
Yeah, we have time for another final question. Behind Farah. So, yeah.
Hi, my name's Kat Lay. I'm a journalist at The Guardian covering global health. It's actually for Peter again on a similar note, but how do you balance the need to kind of create a guaranteed market for a new antibiotic with the need to have antibiotic stewardship and sort of reduce that risk of AMR?
I mean, it's really nice that you're coming up with this question, because it is something which is really what Shionogi, the initial inventor of the drug, is really that's why selected us, because they trust us that we will be able to work with our manufacturer and our distributors to ensure appropriate use. So what we are doing at the moment, we are doing 3 introductory studies in India, South Africa, and Brazil, where we are selecting specific hospitals and where we are introducing cafidarocol in the hospitals together with the clinicians, and we develop the guidelines, so the treatment protocol for which patients are eligible, how should you use the drug, and what are the outcomes. So we are doing these 3 introductory studies, and then we do also an introductory project together with Shionogi in Kenya, where we, for the first time, we want to really introduce a new reserve antibiotic into African hospitals in Kenya, and we want to work with them. So, which patients are eligible? How should we really use this drug? And working with your microbiology lab, diagnostics is often a critical competency that you need to ensure. And of course, you can't expect that this works as it would work in Germany or elsewhere. So you need to also learn. I think we need to be very humble in stewardship. There's a lot of talking about stewardship, and we want to go into these countries and see how can we make it work in practice. And in the end, it needs to be a compromise, because it's about saving lives. You're not going to refuse this treating a patient just because you're not absolutely sure which bacteria is causing this life-threatening infection, and whether this bacteria is resistant or not. In the end, it's a decision that the treating physician has to make, and it's of course about saving lives. But so this is really something which we want to get out of this tech transfer, so that we can publish something about real life experience in stewardship for reserve antibiotics in these countries.
Okay, thank you. So now we are coming to the end of this interesting side event. I will try to summarize a little bit from my notes what I learned, what I found remarkable. We discussed at the beginning about the why and the opportunities of tech transfers. And across there was the access topic. Everyone here, if we could close the door, would be great. It's very so access is something that was mentioned everywhere. So the willingness to share and to give a broader access to the medicines. Yeah, I think this was common. Then the topic of capacity building. A tech transfer is also a capacity building program. The know-how is transferred. And it stays there. It stays in the company, in the recipient's head, in the people, in the staff. So not to be underestimated. Even if it takes longer, or it might even not go to the finish line, something has happened, or it's happening. Then the global health aspect, let's call it from the established pharmaceutical companies. It's not always about only high EBITDA and business. It's also responsibility of sharing and to provide having this responsibility. Then from Rajinder, availability and vaccine equity goes in the same direction. Also from your companies that you are representing, right? And so this and from the continent itself, more the proof of the case to show that it's working, that it's possible, because today the proof is partly there, but there's still some more room, to have it really unquestioned. Yeah. Okay, and now when we look at the challenges and the requirements, I don't want to go into all the criteria. They were mentioned. What stood out is the marriage factor. Yeah. The human factor, like-minded people. It's true. I mean, people buy from people. People work with people. And my project we are organizing a private sector conference once a year where we bring the international private sector together with the continental private sector. And of course, we have workshops, we talk about important enablers, but it's also the networking time. And it is a truth. If you, Ariane, meet someone that where you think, hey, that's a competent person, or you think it's out of this, a true business relationship can develop. And the basis is just the human factor, right? So this should not be underestimated as an enabler, yeah. And of course, the market and the regulation and access to finance and aligned vision and the quality standards. I mean, these are all areas where we work together, everybody in the room, everybody here. And yeah, I think tech transfers are at the end of big efforts and are a goal which is worthwhile working for. And with this, I want to close the session. I want to thank the panelists for your valuable contributions and to the audience for your interesting questions. Thanks a lot.